I responded back to the GBC with 4 main points. That the GBC had completely missed the point of my article. This was not an issue with the gurus, it was an issue concerning the GBC. That the instructions by Srila Prabhupada were clear and specific. That there was not to have been any changes made to the way the GBC manages ISKCON. But the fact that the GBC no longer performed these duties, that clearly is a very drastic and major change. I emphasize that until those changes are undone, that this leaves the GBC in a very weak and disobedient position. Until they restore the duties that Srila Prabhupada prescribed to them, they will remain in a compromised and disobedient position to Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, this had to be corrected. To reject the proposal to restore these duties is not a rejection of Amayatma's ideas, I wrote them, but it is a direct rejection of Srila Prabhupada's authority and his instructions to them, because it is Srila Prabhupada who instructed the GBC not to change the system he had given them, that he had spent 7 years putting into place. And I addressed their one and only reason for rejecting my paper. The one and only reason they gave was that taking these functions away from the gurus would render the current ISKCON gurus with no other function to perform other than that of a Rtvik priest who only performs the initiation ceremonies. My rebuttal to this, which was their one and only objection, was simple. In the early days of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada performed these duties and functions for his own early disciples himself. But once he formed the GBC, he delegated all these functions to the GBC. Once he had delegated these duties to the GBC, he asked his own disciples and new disciples to no longer approach him for these functions, but that we approach our local GBC for carrying out these duties. By 1972, Srila Prabhupada had virtually ceased to perform these functions for his own disciples. The majority of Srila Prabhupada's disciples had joined after that date. And therefore, the majority of Srila Prabhupada's own disciples, Srila Prabhupada never performed these functions for us. Yet this didn't diminish Srila Prabhupada's position as a bona fide guru. Srila Prabhupada hadn't become reduced to that of only a Rtvik priest just because he no longer performed these functions. In this way, I had defeated the GBC's one and only reason for rejecting my paper. So I humbly asked that they please reconsider the actual merits of my research and proposal. Aside from those main points, I asked the GBC if they should still find any issue and disagreement with my conclusions to please engage with me in a deeper and more constructive dialogue toward reaching a mutual understanding. When I sent them my follow-up letter, I was sure this time the GBC would understand and would engage in some form of meaningful and substantive dialogue with me. And they would discuss these actual merits and the substance of my points.